Hello, everyone. This is our recording of our keynote presentation for our Next Steps to Independence event on May 5th, 2025. We're recording this to allow folks who were not able to participate in our event still get the information on our topic this evening for the event. And then for those who were able to attend, it can be a frame of reference for you. So I'm going to kick us off by doing a quick introduction for myself and then our keynote presenters. I'm Rachel Walker. My title is Senior Manager of Community Affairs at Developmental Pathways. I've been in the disability field for now 20 years, which I cannot even believe that time has really flown by. I really am a lover of thrifting, irreverent podcasts. The more silly the podcast, the better for me, and then spending time with my family. I also wanted to share with this group that I am a sibling. So my brother had significant developmental disabilities and was served by developmental pathways, which is how I landed in this field. Our next slide is just going to explore how we're going to spend the next little bit of time together. So we're starting with introductions. We're going to move into talking about the transition journey. Our presenters are going to talk also about the power of choice. We have a slide for questions and answers, but I realize this is a one-way presentation. So just know at the end of this presentation, you will see a slide on a way to get a hold of our presenters and myself if you have additional questions or resource needs. I'm going to kick it off to Erica to introduce herself now.
Thank you, Rachel. My name is Erica Dennison, and I am the sister to a brother who has a developmental disability, and I've had the pleasure of working in the disability field for a little over 20 years now. I work for the Arc of Aurora. We are one of 15 chapters of the Arc sprinkled throughout the entire state of Colorado. And we are all nonprofit organizations with a shared mission of providing advocacy for children and adults of all ages who have developmental disabilities and their families. All of the chapters have individual advocates that essentially carry caseloads that provide advocacy to those folks on their caseloads. And sometimes people will ask me, like, what does advocacy even mean? And the easiest way I can describe it is oftentimes we view advocacy as giving a voice when no one else will listen. So people will often call us when they are experiencing some type of challenge, whether it's a family member calling us or maybe a person with a developmental disability who's experiencing issues. So some examples of a lot of work we do is in the school system, where maybe some kids are experiencing challenges with getting all their needs met at the school, all the way into transition, which why we're here today, well into adulthood. It's not one size fits all for everyone's needs and goals. And so people call us for an array of reasons. And then I always like to ask people or have people think if they've ever shopped at an ARC thrift store. And I always like to let people know that anytime you shop or you donate at a thrift store, a portion of that revenue actually comes back to the ARC chapters so that we can keep our doors open and provide our advocacy services at no cost. So that's a little bit about me as well as the ARC of Aurora.
Hi, I'm Christy Blakely. I'm the Senior Advisor at Family Voices Colorado. Family Voices is a not-for-profit that assists families to navigate through the systems that we have for services. We work with families, we work with adults. I have a strong passion for transition, and one of the reasons I do is because I have a daughter with disabilities who lives in the community thanks to the home and community-based service waivers in the state of Colorado. Lauren is 43, and I've been in this field for 35 years in Colorado. And I am an avid needle pointer, things I don't always admit. So Family Voices is there for you and answers questions at all ages. So we're going to go on into the presentation now.
I can get us kicked off. I'll get us kicked off. So we want to welcome all of you to the transition journey. And what's going to happen for this kind of little, really great acting for all of you who are tuning in is Christy's going to be playing the role of a parent because she is a parent. And I'm going to be playing the role of just the complicated system and professionals kind of throwing some things at you, Christy, to kind of think about as a parent who has a child going through transition. So, getting started, Christy, I want you to think about all the paperwork and applications. There's always going to be more.
Oh, there's so much. I do have this can of alphabet soup. I think that's a good start, don't you?
That is a great start. Absolutely. Alphabet soup is something you are going to stumble upon a lot throughout this journey. Lots of different applications for Medicaid, home and community-based services, and well beyond that. So I know, though, that you are going to be doing great because there's a lot of systems of supports to get you through this.
Well, I
Next one
already
to
feel
consider,
overwhelmed, so just be kind to me, please.
we will be as kind as we possibly can. The next one to consider is transition IEP and school. Have you given any thought about the future?
Well, yes, but it's really hard to think about the future when my kiddo can't even feed himself. So like it doesn't always work for me.
I totally understand. And, you probably have some really big questions about where your loved one will live, if they'll get a job, what their independent skills are going to be. It's a lot to navigate.
All of it. All of it.
It
So
is. And unfortunately, you're probably also finding out throughout this process that the school's going to be done when they're 21 years old.
yes, what do I do then? I work.
You do work. And I think what's great is that there's programs out there that can still allow you to be a contributing citizen while your loved one is receiving the care that they need. So don't worry. There's lots of great supports and services out there
So
for
much to
you.
do. So much to do.
Another thing to consider is the Social Security application. I jokingly tell people that you may feel like you're on a game show because you're going to be constantly asked this question of, are you sure your loved one still has a disability?
I'm pretty sure if something happened and he started walking, the front page in the paper would get a hold of it.
Another thing to consider is those life skills 101. Will your loved one cook? Can they clean laundry, grocery shop? Or are you as mom going to continue to do it for a couple more years or well beyond that?
It feels like a life sentence, honestly. I I don't know that he'll ever be able to do that for himself. And I don't know who else is going to do it.
Well, rest assured, there are lots of wonderful organizations out there that can help hold your hand throughout this process and know that things can change day to day. And we totally understand that. I understand the lives of people with disabilities are not real constant, and there's services and supports out there that can help you through that. So we got you. Another one to consider is Medicaid and long-term care. I kind of joke with people that the maze of Medicaid may feel like you are trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded with your hand behind your back. I understand. It's a lot to navigate, Christy.
Well, I think he's on a waiver, but doesn't that change at 18? I don't understand how that happens.
It's a great question. And it does. It can change at 18. There are some waivers available that your loved one can enroll onto when they turn 18. And those are considered waivers offered through home and community-based services that are available for adults that can help them with all the things day to day. Another thing that I'm going to throw at you, you talked about your alphabet soup. Well, I got acronym soup for you. EBD, SLS, DD, and no, Christy, it's not the latest boy band sensations, but these are all programs that can help your loved one. I know, though, that the next step is trying to figure out, well, what program is the best fit?
Isn't there somebody that can just do this for me?
That would be excellent, wouldn't it? I think having parents going alongside individuals when they need that support is great. But if that's not an option, there are certainly organizations out there that can help support and hold your hand along the way.
Okay.
There's
That's it,
also living
right? There's nothing
arrangements.
else.
Well, there's lots to think about. I understand. And I relate to you. I relate to you and all the other parents and anyone else who may be tuning into this. There's also living arrangements. Have you thought about what that's going to look like if they'll live with you at home? alone with a
I
caregiver,
think he'll
a
be with me
roommate.
forever, but I really worry for what happens when I can't take care of him.
And that's something I think a lot of parents experience is what does the future hold when you are not there anymore? And that's why I think contingency planning is so important. When you come up with a plan of what that looks like when life's transitions happen. Lastly, though, as we wrap this up, it wouldn't be going into adulthood without going to our favorite place, the DMV, because nothing is like a rite of passage than getting a bad photo taken of yourself for your ID. So don't forget to do that, Christy.
Oh my goodness. He'll never drive.
But still, even so, we all as adults need to have an ID, even if we don't have a driver's license.
Okay, if you say so.
Christy, I know it's a lot to take on, but just know that there are services and supports out there. And if you need any help navigating through all of this, there are organizations out there like Family Voices, Developmental Pathways, Easter Sales, and any of the ARC chapters. We are here for you, and we are just a small nugget of what's out there to help. So we've got you, and we've got your back and your loved ones back.
Thank you so much. I thought I had a good start with my alphabet soup.
And you did.
So some of you may be able to relate to the conversation we just had in our skit. It feels very, very overwhelming. And there are a lot of time things that happen on certain dates with changing 18 and all of that. We want you to know that there's not one way to transition, that it really depends on your transitioning youth. And there are ways to take things on and check things off on lists. You're going to have resources tonight to assist you with all that needs to get done. But what we want you to know is there isn't one way to transition, that we need to think about what that transitioning youth, your loved one, wants to do. Do they want to continue education? There's continuing education in the state of Colorado. If they want to work, there's opportunities to work. And also there are programs that they can go to and actually be out in the community every day of the week if they want to be. Some of this depends on you, your family, your loved one, and knowing what they want to do, and then creating that world for them. I knew that my daughter wanted to live on her own, that she wanted control of her day. And that is what the world that we have created for her. And others get to do the similar things. There are waivers to be chosen, things that change at 18, and all sorts of legal components like guardianship and shared decision making. Hopefully, over the next hour, we will assist you to understand that you're not alone in this, and that also there are ways to figure out how to create what you want for your loved one. Next slide. The things we think about and the buckets, if you will, that we think about are what do you need to do as far as navigation? As far as figuring out what systems to plug into, if you will. Is there recreation or day programs that your individual would benefit from? Anywhere from swimming to basketball to adaptive yoga. Do they want a continuing education certification that isn't a full degree, or is that just not something your individual would want to do? There's pre-employment, and there's so much more as adults. The thing we can do is we can start early, but some of these things have timelines, like age 18, the adult Medicaid waivers change, and we need to figure out which waiver to plug into so that you have Medicaid as a healthcare coverage. It's never too late to start, but understand that you can do this on your own timeline, as your loved one allows. Next slide. We always joke about how do you eat a whole elephant? And that's how it feels. Transitioning feels like a whole elephant that you've got to eat in one time. And the answer is one bite at a time. We just need to stop and we need to listen to those that have gone before. What did they learn? How did they transition? And what would they suggest? Knowing that there's some things like getting a Colorado ID is necessary. It's necessary to travel. It's necessary for cashing a check. It's necessary. Doing some things that we do for adults, as adults, but we can also ask others like open-ended questions. Has anybody like my child gotten a job? Have you ever had, ask a case manager, have you ever had a child like mine get employment or go to college? As a family, you can discuss seeing where you think your individual would be in 5, 10, 15 years. And that planning can be a roadmap for what needs to go and happen as your individual is finishing transition and then going on into the community. Where are they going to live? Are they going to live with you? Are they going to live in a host home? Are they going to have an apartment with a friend? Thinking about what that independence means to your individual, your loved one, and to you. What do you want your life to look like so that your kiddo has the life they choose? We have to break this down into bite-sized pieces and not eat the whole elephant at once. Part of what we do, and one thing that I want to share with you is you are not alone. There are, how many vendors do we have?
It will be around 46 vendors.
We are going to have 46 vendors there to support you. And if you get one thing from each of those vendors, you've got 46 more opportunities or resources in your tool belt. I feel like this is the time you're going to fill your tool belt for the transition years. Next slide. Family Voices has created a transition checklist. We have it both in English and Spanish. So take a deep breath. Know that we have made a chart that is check-offable and little things that you don't even think about maybe on this checklist and help you not have to come up with your own roadmap. Years ago, my daughter, we realized she was not able to write her name. Somebody very thoughtful said to me, have your other daughter sign her name, go have it made into a self-inking stamp. To this day, that is Lauren's signature, that self-inking stamp. We may be on our second or third stamp now after 43 years, but it took one thing off my plate and allowed Lauren to have something that every adult needs, a signature. I encourage you to go to these transition checklists. Family Voices has them out on the table and would be happy to give you one. Next slide. I now would like to introduce Erica.
Well, thanks so much, Christy. I very much relate to everything that you just shared with whoever may be tuning in. I think it is so important to talk about taking it one step at a time, because if you do it all at once, it's just too much, right? So just do what works for you and your family and your loved one, and you'll be just fine. I'm so excited to be here to be able to talk to everyone a little bit about decision making. And I want to remind people, because you may or may not know, but once someone turns 18, they are considered an adult. And what that means is they have the right to make their own choices and decisions. And you might be thinking like, oh, I didn't even think about that, but it's true. It doesn't change just because someone has a disability. No matter who you are, if you turn 18, you're considered an adult. And so a question that a lot of you might be having is, well, what does that look like? Does my loved one need full 24/7 support? Do they just need a little bit of help with certain things like medical appointments or maybe financial management? Or maybe they don't need any help at all. There's lots of people with developmental disabilities who need zero support. So everyone's journey is different, but this is an opportunity for you to get curious and think about what independence really can look like for your loved one. Next slide, please. So on this slide is a decision-making tool because there's lots of different decision-making roles that are available, and a lot of people don't know what's available. And so that's why through the Arc of Aurora's training and education program called Think Change, we created this tool that is available for you to scan with your phone or device. And what this tool provides you is 7 different options available here in Colorado that range from the most restrictive decision-making support all the way up to a very minimal amount of restriction when it comes to making decisions for people. And a lot of people don't understand there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of different roles that someone may have. And while I would love to go through every single option on this form today, I don't have time. So what I'm going to be doing is talking about the least restrictive decision maker role called supported decision making, or SDM, all the way down to guardianship. But what I want you to know in the end is that there are lots of different roles that someone could have in their loved one's life, whether that's assisting them with making decisions and choices or making those decisions and choices for them. Next slide, please. So I'm going to get us kicked off and start with guardianship first. And so a myth that I want to just break here and now is just because someone turns 18 and just because they have a disability, it does not mean that they have to have a guardian. And that's something that may come to a surprise to lots of people, because a lot of folks that we work with are told, like, you got to get guardianship, you got to get guardianship, and there's no law that says you have to. So I just want to bust that myth right here and now. And when we're looking at that list that is available of all those decision-making supports, guardianship should always be looked at last. Even the National Guardianship Association says you should look at all these other decision-making supports before you even explore guardianship, because it's pretty restrictive. And I'm going to get into that here in a little bit. But in short, I want to help people understand what is a guardian. So a guardian is having someone under guardianship is a legal arrangement where someone who is over 21 goes to court and basically says, I need to be the person that makes personal and health decisions when someone cannot. And so a lot of times that will happen for folks with developmental disabilities. And the court will often refer to that person with a developmental disability as the ward. That might be something that you'll hear a term used. But the thing that I want to really clarify with guardianship is that it essentially removes that person's right to make their own choices. That guardianship is responsible for making all those decisions and choices, such as where the person lives, medical care, and all aspects of daily life. Next slide, please. Oh, I apologize. Please back up. Thank you. So, as we're talking about guardianship, some people come to me and say, well, how does that work? And it can be a pretty complicated process. So, I'm going to give you just more of like a surface little step by step of what to expect. So, generally, someone would begin that process before or on someone's 18th birthday. That's what the Colorado Judicial Branch recommends. And what you would do is you would file a petition, or you would essentially apply with the court to be a guardian of that ward. And you apply with the county that that ward lives in. So, for example, if I live in Arapahoe County and that ward lives in El Paso County, you would apply with El Paso County. Next step that would probably happen is you would have a visitor with a court visitor, and their job is to basically evaluate the entire situation to figure out what the story is, why guardian's needed, and all that good stuff. And then they will basically bring that back to the judge. There'll be a court hearing. And then you have some follow-up paperwork you have to do afterwards, 30 and 60 days out. Every year, you'll need to do an annual report and file that with the court. And what that annual report for the guardianship, for the guardian will essentially look like is just you're giving an overall report of what life looks like for that person. What have they been up to? What's going on medically? Are there any challenges going on? And just kind of giving an update to the court. The thing that I want people to know about is there are fees associated with applying for guardianship. There is a fee generally associated with applying for guardianship. There's a fee associated with the court visitor. And then sometimes people just say, this is a lot for me to take on. I'm actually just going to hire an attorney to help me go through this process. And those fees and costs can range quite widely. And so it can look very different person to person on how they choose to obtain that. I like to let people know that I'm a guardian. I'm a co-guardian to my brother, Dan, with my mom. And he has very, very, very high needs. He needs help from the moment that he wakes up to the moment that he goes to bed. And so guardianship is the right fit for him. Guardianship makes a lot of sense because he needs help with all of his decision making and choices. But what I want everyone to know is needs are not one size fits all, and guardianship isn't the best fit for everyone. And so when I was putting this together, I was kind of trying to figure out kind of a funny and relatable way of guardianship. And so, like, you might be watching this and I'm asking you, do you own a pair of jeans? Well, yeah, you own a pair of jeans. Everyone does. Do you own a pair of jeans that's maybe one to two sizes too small? Most of us are guilty of that, right? Jeans can be like guardianship. Those small jeans can be like guardianship in my description of that. They can be awfully restrictive and they can be pretty uncomfortable. And that leads me to talk a little bit about some real talk about some folks that I've worked with in the past who had guardians, and it really just wasn't a good fit like those jeans. 3 stories. One of them was a guy who was turning 40 and it was a milestone birthday. And all he wanted to do was get a tattoo on his shoulder. He had autism. He was highly intelligent and very, very creative. He made the artwork for himself. So his goal for his 40th birthday, he wanted to get a tattoo. But in the end, his guardian made all those decisions and choices for him, and they said no, and he couldn't get his tattoo. Another story was a woman who was in her late 20s and she really wanted to date. She was having all those feelings of relationship, desiring to have a relationship and find a partner that many of us experience ourselves. Even she herself was like, I don't really quite understand healthy relationships. She took classes, she learned about what she felt like she needed to learn in order to have healthy relationships, and she was ready. But in the end, her guardian said, no, you can't date. They made that choice for her, and she never got to date. And the last one was this guy. He was in his late 50s, lived at home with mom and dad, who were both his guardians. And his goal was to live independently. And he worked on this for years. And by golly, he was ready. He learned how to cook. He learned how to clean. He learned how to ride the RTD bus. He learned how to drive, all those things that we need to know as adults. And he was ready. But in the end, because his parents were guardians, they made that choice for him. And they said, no, you can't move out. You got to stay here. And so what I want people to be reminded of is all of these situations were not dangerous. These are choices that adults typically get to make, but these folks were really restricted, like those genes, because of guardians. They truly didn't need a guardian, to be honest, based on their situations, but it had a huge impact on them. They lost the ability to make their own choices. Their mental health was impacted. Their independence took a hit. They felt trapped and they lost confidence, and they were acting out not because of their disability, but because they felt like they lost control. And I'd like to bring up these stories because to me, a good guardian is all about relationship building and never about taking away independence and making sure that that person has a voice whenever possible. And so as I wrap up guardianship, I'm going to move to a different kind of pant. I'm going to start talking about some stretchy waistband pants that we all are huge fans of. I do love me some sweatpants. So I'm going to talk about something that's a lot less restrictive than those jeans. And they're more like those comfy stretch pants that is supported decision making. So let's go to the next slide, Rachel. Thank you. So, supported decision making, or SDM, it's actually not very well known. It's still relatively new here in Colorado, but it's becoming a really popular decision making approach for people. It's backed by Colorado law in 2021 from a Senate bill, and it's a nationally recognized approach that is currently in 29 states. And what it is that a person with a developmental disability gets to stay in charge of their life with support from trusted people, such as family or friends, or maybe even like their favorite Starbucks barista down the street if they'll have them, right? So SDM is about a teamwork and not a takeover, because guardianship removes that decision making right. Supported decision making really supports self determination. And in the disability world, we refer to self determination as basically that person having the right and the ability to make choices, to solve problems, to take responsibility, and to go through those failures in life. And so, how SDM works is that decider, that's the person with the disability, chooses people and what they want help with. There's deciders and then there's supporters. The person with the disability is the decider, and then their supporters are the trusted people. And so, what happens, if you could go to the next slide, please, Rachel, they can complete an agreement, a voluntary written decision making agreement. And it can look very different person to person. On this slide is just an example template of what a decision making agreement can look like. It can have any format that you want. This is simply an example, but there are some requirements that we have to have on that agreement, such as outlining who are the people that are helping make the decisions. Maybe that's mom and dad and sister and uncle, and what that person wants help with. So maybe that's things with like healthcare related decisions or housing, education, money, staying safe, relationships, how they spend their time, food and clothing, and so much more. Like, think about just everyday life. So it's a really great, flexible, and empowering approach. And it outlines how that person wants to be supported. Maybe it's explaining options. Maybe it's reviewing pros and cons of something or helping communicate with others. That agreement is written and it can be shared with doctors, bankers, whoever is involved in that person's life. Generally, it needs to be signed by at least 2 witnesses. If there are not witnesses available, you can just get it notarized, which is just a stamp on there saying that, yes, we saw this. I think the beauty of the SDM agreement is that there's no court involved, so you don't have to deal with the justice system. And it's generally free. Like, you don't really have to pay anything. The only time that maybe you would pay is if maybe that decider chooses to pay someone to help maybe them write the agreement for them, or the cost of paying a notary, which is very nominal. The law itself doesn't generally say how often it should be updated, but general rule of thumb is that you should update it annually. So as I wrap up supported decision making, it's all about helping support them with making their decisions, not about you making them for them. And so I ask you to ask yourself, how can I support choice and not replace it? So as we wrap things up on the next slide, please, Rachel, I leave you with this quote that was actually shared from a coworker, Megan, who works alongside Christy while we were planning today. And the quote is, "It's a bummer to run into a tree, but it's a tragedy to never be allowed to." And that quote was stated by a blind mountain biker, and he couldn't see at all. And what this quote means is that, yes, while getting hurt, it's unfortunate. It's far worse being denied the opportunity to even try. And I think it's a really powerful statement that people with disabilities should still have the opportunity to adventure, to grow, to fail, and to flourish through life. So that's where I leave us today when it comes talking about decision making. And Rachel, I'm going to hand it off to you next.
Thank you so much, Erica. I'm going to close us out today by just talking about really Medicaid services for adults that are available. Developmental Pathways serves Arapahoe, Douglas, and Elbert counties, but these services are available statewide. And so I know lots of people viewing this recording might be from a different area, and just know that these resources are available throughout the state of Colorado. So this is just at a glance what developmental pathways looks like. We've been serving our community for more than 60 years. There was something called the case management redesign that happened, which really allowed us to expand our service delivery. So we really support the lifespan, so birth to death and everything in between of those with significant disability in Arapahoe, Douglas, and Elbert County. We now serve around 15,000 people. So this is being recorded in roughly May 2025. And this gives you a little bit of a gauge on how large we are now and the need that's in our community. And with that, we translate to around 600 staff to support those 15,000. So I told you that we serve the life spectrum, but this is how it really plays out in terms of buckets of eligibility. So we support folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities, so that IDD qualification. We also support children under 18 with significant medical needs, adults with kind of general disability. This is kind of a broad term, but that could include physical, medical, blind, HIV, and AIDS would also fall into that bucket. We serve adults with mental health needs, and then we serve adults really 16 and up with brain or spinal cord injuries. This is how all that gets translated into what we would call our pillars of support. So we have kind of three main pillars of services and program delivery. This group might not be interested in it, but I'll mention it anyway. But we serve babies and toddlers in our early intervention program. Really, the bread and butter for this group is in our case management. They operate our long-term care system. And so these include several different programs, including those Medicaid waivers that we keep talking about. And then we have some local IDD programming that our counties have generously given us funding to provide additional supports for our IDD population. This case management tier in the middle is really where the folks that are listening to this call will likely track into. And that's because those are our adult programs. They're the ones that really provide those ongoing lifetime amount of supports through that. You don't need to know the ins and outs of every single program. In fact, I think it's better if you don't. There's a lot of different nuances and different systems that you could be in play there. However, it's really helpful for you to know that once you give us a call, you could be eligible for several different programs, and we will help you navigate which one fits you best. This is just to pique your interest in getting involved with your case management agency. If you're in Arapahoe, Douglas, and Elbert, it would be developmental pathways, just how we help young adults as you transition into adult services. If you still are in school, we're a lovely complement to your school district services. There's no reason why you can't be enrolled in developmental pathways and access special education through your school district. There's no cost to our services and programs. These are programs that if you're eligible for these services, you are entitled to receive the program. We allow access to a lot of additional resources, funding, case management, coordination, navigation, all of those things can be accessed through your local case management agency. And then why we're here really in this presentation is to support that transition to adult services. So at the beginning, when we were doing our little skit, there was that conversation about accessing Medicaid services, accessing those long-term programmatic supports. That is going to be offered through your case management agency. So we can be a hub of access to additional supports, especially as you transition into adult services. And there's no age that's too late. So if you are beyond that 18-year-old age that we brought up a few times, no big deal. Please give us a call, fill out our online form, and we will help navigate the next steps. This final slide, like I said, would be our portion of Q&A during our live presentation, but we realize this is a one-way presentation. So instead, I welcome you to take a screenshot. We'll make sure that this resource is available for you guys ongoing. But these are the folks that have been part of the planning for the event on May 5th. In addition, they're great resources to get you started in your journey to adult services. So I'll leave us there. Thank you for your time and attention, and we look forward to hearing from you.